Hello and welcome to Do the Right Thing, a weekly writing prompt podcast. I'm Matthias.
And I'm Jarvis.
Jarvis and I are aspiring writers, which means we never ever take time to write.
Yeah, so we're doing a challenge. Each week we sit down for 30 minutes to write a complete short story. Our goal is to use 3 randomly generated words.
Then we come on the podcast, we read the stories, we talk about what we've learned in writing them, and then we talk about stories written by you listeners.
We're simply here to help you do the right thing.
That was really well executed. You said the actual intro this time without a script and everything.
It was ingrained in the back of my eyelids.
Maybe we're getting better.
Yeah, or maybe this is just a fluke.
So this week we are joined by Elliot from Media MD and Deep in Pact.
Yeah, how are you?
G'day. I'm alright. How are you guys going?
Fantastic.
Peachy King with a nice lemon on top.
Okay. I'm really glad you came on the podcast because I think you were the first Doof member to start writing along with us, which I thought was really, really cool.
I had a streak going for a while and I lost it, and I've recently gotten back on the wagon, so it's good to be here. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun doing the right thing.
Did you ever, when So-Called Writers was going on, did you ever participate in that?
No, I didn't find out about it until it was all over, unfortunately, so I never had the chance.
There's some good stories there.
I was so glad when I found out this was a thing.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I was so glad too.
I've never been gladder.
So this week's words were late, tense, butter, and hot. How was doing the right thing this week for you, Elliot?
Yeah, for like your 20th time.
I'm glad you didn't write about trains. That was my one big consolation.
I was tempted to submit a fake train story like earlier in the week just to see what would happen, because I was surprised that my invite was still on after that story a few weeks ago. There's a lot more pressure to do the right thing when you know you're going to be here recording.
Right.
So, I don't know. I eventually just sort of had to go with something because I realized I was kind of defeating the purpose of the whole exercise by worrying too much about trying to create the best story I've written.
Right. Yeah.
In sort of doing the right thing, and I was like, well, I guess that's not really the point. So I've got something that I'm, okay with, but there's definitely. I think I got in my own head a bit, panicking about the fact that I was going to be on.
Well, I'm sorry to have put on so much pressure, but maybe that turned out something. Squeeze something good out.
Exactly, yeah. Because I know when I'm under that pressure with that like time crunch, when you waited to the last minute, to like write it. That's when some of the best stuff comes out.
Is it?
Or some of the worst
For
stuff.
me, that's when I give up and then just like half-ass it, which usually turns out okay. But
it just goes either way. Like I feel like under the pump, you either do something fantastic or it's just drivel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How was it for you, Jarvis?
For me, it was pretty good. This week, I had the idea of what I wanted to write in my head. At the beginning, I was going to do it much earlier. Didn't do it. I did it last night, this morning. And the reason why I didn't do it is because the week's just been back to back. Haven't really had like a solid moment to sit down. Also, it got cold this week.
Yeah, frightfully cold.
Excuse me. Which means that I had to pick up more shifts at Starbucks because we were swamped on hot bar.
I don't.
Hot bar is every hot drink. So I was making peppermint mochas, pumpkin spice lattes, cinnamon dolce lattes, caramel brulee lattes. Okay, and they're all delicious, filled with sugar. But I say all that to say, I think I did 25 hours this week.
Oh, wow. Damn. On top of classes.
On top of classes. Yeah. Which I think 25 is the max hours. So, yeah. Busy. But doing the right thing for this one time, I really loved it.
I did, too. I can't wait to read your story.
Yeah.
It's my favorite in a while, I think.
Oh, my story? Mm-hmm. I do. I have a lot to say about it. And it includes, what I've noticed, slight tangent, I've noticed that some of the best things that I end up writing...
this is not a tangent. This is very relevant.
Okay, I guess it's just like, I'm going to keep going. Some of the best things that I find myself writing is influenced heavily by a song or an artist or just, music. Because not to talk too much, but I recently discovered this fantastic stoner rock band named Electric Wizard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like stoner rock.
Sounds like stoner rock. Literally, they're like a first album, I think is named Dope Smoker.
Oh. It's terrible.
It is pretty terrible, but it's funny also. So,
okay.
Yeah, it was a great time. What about you?
So... I've been very busy, unfortunately,
yes.
and I keep wanting... I haven't had a time to sit down and, like, get organized and do everything, which has been frustrating.
Well, also, you said that this week you were running a whole organization.
Yeah, a little bit, and not running it very well, because I did not set deadlines in advance, and so everything's been going last minute, even though I'm in charge of it. So there's no one to blame but me, which is... Shit. Really, like, I set the deadline and then did nothing to meet it. But yeah, so I've been busy. But I wrote the story, and when we'll talk about it. But it turned out way too long, and yeah, and it's made me like realize a lot of not like stuff that I've been like been realizing, but like stuff that I fall back on and something that I can work on.
About your own writing.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yes. Well, specifically the writing for this, I don't usually write the same way when I write for myself.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk community talk real quick.
All right.
So we have significantly less submitters this week. My guess is because it's NaNoWriMo, right?
True.
And so I'm assuming that a lot of people are busy with that, which is totally valid.
Yeah. Also, I think it could be because last week was Halloween,
and
well, because they would have been writing. Or coming up with those ideas during that week. And I know for me and a couple of other people...
I think it was the week before last, wasn't it? It's the 9th.
If it's a good Halloween party, that come down is going to last 2 weeks.
Okay.
So, take it easy, guys. Drink some water. And, if you can, eat menudo.
What the hell is that?
Oh,
I've never heard of this.
Do you know cows? So you take that. so you take that like stomach, right? Cut it up,
okay,
and you boil it in this delicious broth, and then you eat that, and it will instantly cure your hangover.
Okay, so if you have a spare cow,
yeah, just take out the stomach, cut it up.
Which stomach? They have at least 3 stomachs.
You take out the one that looks like the less dirty.
They're cow stomachs.
Yeah, exactly. So it's hard to choose.
Okay.
I mean, just take out the one that it looks like they're not using the most. And,
I mean, they don't
tie
need
that
3.
to the adjacent ones.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
the cow can still function.
Right, like how greedy do they have to be to each have 3 stomachs?
We get it, you're hungry.
Yeah,
Jesus.
They eat grass, like come on.
That's a lot of grass.
Yeah. All right, that's great. Well, so if you didn't participate this week, that is totally okay.
Yeah,
but consider, using it as a warm-up for your NaNoWriMo stuff, I think it's a great way to just, like, get yourself writing and as well explore other ideas as you're doing it. But yeah, if you're doing NaNoWriMo and you just feel like you don't have enough time, that is totally valid. Just
and please
consider it.
Keep on pushing. It is a very noble month. It's a noble goal to knock out that many words. I know it's hard. So if we can help you in any way, that's why we're here.
Yeah. Because they're just like posting an entire 3,000 word chapter on as your submission.
Exactly. Because you wrote it in 30 minutes.
And then just like have a character just say the three of the words and you can move on,
Honestly, yeah. Yes, we can.
And I would request that if you do submit or if you don't, and you just like to listen, take the time to go to the subreddit and maybe read some of the stories and leave a comment because so many of them are so good and they need more attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would like to have more crosstalk and stuff like that. Of course, again, I recognize that because Jarvis and I don't comment very much, that is a little hypocritical, but...
Well, okay. There was a very structured reason as to why that happens.
It's because you work 25 hours a week on top of classes and homework?
True, but also it's because when I got here, the first thing Mattia said to me was, "Did you roll for the stories?" So we hadn't read any of them when we started.
I had read some. I hadn't read all of them until right before we recorded.
Exactly, but that's all I'm saying.
Okay.
We wait till the last minute.
We do.
And that's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
All right. I think we could just move into the stories at this point. Sorry about that, Elliot. You can see we're quite prone to talk about random stuff.
No, I love it.
Well, thank you. So first, we're going to talk about Jarvis's story. So how was writing in particular? Is there anything we should know going into it, Jarvis?
Nothing really. I will say that a heavy inspiration is, as I said, Electric Wizard, specifically this song named Funeral-Localypse.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And
So like an apocalypse of funerals?
yes. No, it's Funeral-tropolis. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is still kind of cool. It's like a huge city, but everyone's dead, I guess. But, yeah, I don't know. There's nothing really that I need to say going into it. I enjoyed writing this a lot. At first, when I came up with the idea, I was like, you know what? This could be a 6-part Netflix special. But then I realized, Netflix wouldn't buy an idea of like a wizard, would they? Because
Oh, well, why not?
Well, I haven't really seen anything like heavily mythical on Netflix. I've seen it on Amazon Prime, seen it on Hulu, seen it on HBO, but not Netflix.
Oh, maybe just not yet.
Doesn't Netflix have that Dark Crystal show? That looks...
Wait,
I think so, yeah. I don't know much
that
about
Netflix?
it, but I've heard it's good. Yeah.
I thought it was Hulu.
No, it's Netflix.
Yeah, also, Netflix does have Sabrina.
And
That's
urban. That's differently.
Yeah.
And also, doesn't it take place in the same world as Riverdale?
Yes, it does. Because they're both Archie comics.
I hate it.
The CW network needs to be stopped. This
I
is gone
hate
too
it
far.
so much.
Well, the issue is that there's 12 more seasons of each show.
Oh my god.
Guaranteed. We will be 37, and our children will be like, hey, do you want to watch Sabrina, the teenage Riverdale Archie season 7 with me?
I hate it.
The worst thing about the CW, there'll be like 4 spin-offs down by that point. It's going to be a show about a character who's in the background of episode 3 by that point.
God, that's awful. They're not even good.
Yeah, but the thing is, most TV isn't good. Most film isn't good.
Yeah, and it just falls into that. Mm-hmm.
My deep, dark secret is that I have watched every episode of Supernatural as it's come out for the last 100 million years.
That's a fun show.
It has its moments still, but at this point it was kind of like, I was just getting to the point where I was like, I don't think I can keep doing this, and then they announced season 15 will be the last, and I was like, well, now I have to finish it off. It's trash, but it's my trash, and I love it.
Yeah, so oh gosh. Sorry, Jarvis said that my earbuds are leaking, but it's already like at the second lowest volume. It's at volume 2.
Yeah, it's probably fine. I just want to, excuse me, make sure that it's not picking this up.
Okay. Well, I'm surprised if you watched all of that doesn't come up more on Deep in Pact, because I feel like I mean when I tell people about Pact, I usually use it as a comparison to Supernatural. I say it's like Supernatural but better.
Okay, better Supernatural.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. It especially because I think the first 5 seasons of Supernatural are legitimately good, and I think we've briefly talked about that, but we generally don't talk about it on Deep Impact on purpose because, I mean, it's overall the show's pretty weak, and I think Ruben hates it, so I'm not allowed to talk about it.
Well, and of course, Pact has like left that setting behind of the actual monster hunting at this point in the story. So
yeah, sort of. I mean, it's left Supernatural far behind in terms of quality as well.
Yeah. All right, well, let's just jump into Jarvis's story.
Oh yeah, sure. The name of this is New Energies. The air that day was cleaner than most. No smog or stench from an offering infected the sky, making way for the seaweed green moon to hang low. The lack of those black clouds let me know I was in new territory. Across the peninsula, every day needed a new offering. Whether it be items of sentiment or towers of hemp, the gods needed us to lose something to know our place. But after crossing Mount Mastodon, the air became breathable and pleasant, the haze not darkening the mind. I guess here less people gave offerings, or just decided to ignore the gospel. I brought nothing with me but an empty bag for the road. As for any wizard, you must acquaint yourself with the lands you roam. Feel for the energy. Where it comes, where it goes. Before I left academia, my professor spoke unto me the words his did before him. When on a quest for knowledge, come with nothing. Preconceived notions and well-fluffed egos do nothing but filter the knowledge through an unnecessary layer. A layer by your design. The layer that separates the wizards from the charlatans. So as soon as Mount Macedon was behind me, I could truly start anew. So I fastened a book from the bark of the trees and ink from last night's catch. Then I followed the path, collected a sample from everything my eyes saw, categorized, organized, and sometimes named the strange greenery and animals I passed. It's sort of an adoption of new energy, tapping into frequencies that make it all tick. Made my journey months to a year longer than expected, but rewarding and ever necessary. Vegetation moving into the heart of Yilra's forest took on a twisted form. The grass shimmered purple and trees covered the sky, softened to a buoyance not unlike any fungus, even dropped their branches for close-knit seed sacs filled with an apparently delicious liquid similar to spiked honey. Along the path, beautiful teal, emerald, and red mushrooms lined the mud road, clustered in groups of 3 and 4, some polka-dotted and others striped like a candy cane. Everything seeped hot gas, like an exhale. Gusts of spores would spurt into the air, covering everything in a little bit of green. You could hear it all breathe. The path through the forest was surprisingly neat and tame compared to the jungle that surrounded it. At the time, I thought I was the only one to even fathom summons roaming outside of our city. That there can and are stronger energies than the ones we've cultivated and standardized. But ever since the hills turned to marsh, then forest, I've been following 2 sets of footprints. One small and healed, the other clawed and gigantic. The footprints led to a clearing in the center of the forest. There sat a sizable cabin made from the fungus trees. It looked old, as if there before anything else. Spores collected at the base, forming a bubbly and almost foamy foundation. The glass windows have greened over with moss, and the front door handle has been eaten away by this place's equivalent of termites. Out front, a still-lit lantern hung with a sign right under it. Yilra's Inn and Shop. Walking up to it, I could feel the forest looking in. Vegetation and overgrowth halting at a defined line around the cabin. Could you believe I was tense knocking on that door? Nothing in this new land was scary or threatening in the slightest. But the energies I had just connected with was warning me what was on the other side. From within, the low croak of something old answered, "Come." Inside, it was everything I hoped for. Dragonflies and wisps chased each other in the air. Books and jars and potions and drinks lined the walls, reaching all the way to the mile-high ceiling. It was warm in there. The lamplight in every corner of the room radiated the heat of a fireplace. Instantly, I saw how this place could be an inn. There was not 1, not 2, but 3 hallways, and a staircase branching off from the room in every direction. In the center of the room, there was a large pot sitting on a table-sized brick. A grayed man who was old in the face stood over it, mixing in the contents of the jars round the pot, a puff of smoke for every dash. "Do you have any butter?" he said, pausing for just a moment to give me a smile. I stepped in further, took in the world they said could never exist. Your shoes, please." A wrinkled but energetic finger pointed back to the door. There was a 4x4 shoe cubby and a welcome mat that looked hand-stitched. I stepped back, gave my feet a couple of wipes, and put my shoes up. walked down to him, unbuttoned my bag, and held out a jar of the best hemp my college could grow. With a smirk and a side-eye, he let out a chuckle. So you're a religious type. In my naivete, I didn't get the joke, but I took it that I can keep my hemp. The man left the pot and stepped out in front of me. He stuck out a hand. Yil him, partner to Yil Ra, and the host for your stay. We shook, him giving me a bit extra of a grip. Nestor, student of academia. I came from across the peninsula to learn about your lands. We have had myths for years of this land being barren of any tangible energy. The lie worked, huh? For a moment, it connected. For a moment, I thought over my people, their values and appetite. So it gave a bittersweet smile, and Yilhim brought me in for a hug. Welcome to a better world. For months after, he taught me all I needed to know about their energy. Surprisingly, the flow is actually contradictory to my own. Yilhim explained that you don't dictate the energy, but more so let it flow out of you, like a dance between lovers. He was my substitute professor for a time, forced me to face the judgments, and carried with me over Macedon. Yilra was out exploring the northern quarter. Thankfully, when they found the time, they'd mirror in to chat with her student in waiting. Their power lied in summons, reaching into the other side and chartering a temporary soul bond with a willing participant. That was what I could never master, letting them in. Because of that, I was never able to go back home.
I really like the story, Jarvis.
Oh, thank you.
I really like it a lot. This is one of my favorites of yours so far, just because it's very, very different. It's this mystical, clean air, forested land. It's like you know in those
Jarvis is left to the smoking behind him.
Yes.
Yes.
The metaphor works metatextually.
That's very true. That's very true. The setting reminds me of when in like a kid's cartoon, right? Where they go to a magical land, and it's like a kid's fantasy version of a fantasy. Like the Lord of the Rings is not like this, right?
Yeah.
But the kid version of Lord of the Rings, the even more kid version, is like this, where there's colored mushrooms and interesting plants and stuff like that. And you live inside a mushroom.
A house made of fungus. This a little different, but it's like Smurfs kind of imagery.
Yes.
Brightly colored fantasy sort of world.
Yeah, and I love that a lot. It took me the second to read through to really understand what was going on with the magic and what was being said about the energy and stuff like that. I still don't fully grasp it, but I definitely get where it was going, and I thought that was really interesting too.
Yeah, I think go ahead.
I was just gonna say, my understanding is it's some sort of there's energy is almost this sort of mystical currency here. You've got people giving it to the gods and stuff, as well as sort of more physical offerings, and then obviously there's this new land that our protagonist has come to that's found a better way to kind of deal with all that. Yeah,
there was a touch of how he says he has to offer something to the land every day, you had to offer something to the gods every day so you know your place or something like that, which I thought was a really nice idea, and really kind of gets you the feeling of what the perspective is on the world back home, where it's the gods are making you always sacrifice something, so you know that you're lesser than them and stuff.
You know exactly where you are. But yeah, on the idea of the magic system, I think one thing that I was trying to go for was describing I don't know. It's hard to describe. So when I think of a wizard, right, when they conjure upon a like fireball, right, I see the energy as coming from what's around them, coming from the earth itself into them. And I was trying to figure that out, like these energies within these like different lands, and how going to this whole new place, they have to adopt a new, I guess, style in a sense. Sure. But yeah, then again, I wasn't fully certain as to what extent it really goes to. Okay.
Yeah, I got the sense that you didn't quite have you didn't understand, you didn't know what the magic system is start to finish, but like that's par for the course.
Because I mean, I definitely do have ideas on what it could be, but at the same time, I kind of figured out that if this person is chronicalizing their journey, right? We're just talking about it in the past tense. They wouldn't necessarily go in depth as to what the magic, like how the magic works, because that's second nature to them. They spent their whole life studying it. Sure. So it's, I guess, assumed that the person who is reading this also knows what the flow is, because I see it as a fundamental part of everyone's life that lives in this place. Sure. So yeah, I guess that's my excuse.
So on a different angle, I think that like this is definitely your voice. Like there's definitely many lines in here that if it was ripped out at random and shown to me, I would probably guess that it was yours. Okay. But it does depart from the normal, like very noir and dark, and it departs from the normal tone. And I thought that was a cool. Like I'm glad that it did. Like I could definitely tell this is like one of your protagonists, right? But you know they're not smoking cigarettes, right? They're definitely being different than normal, and I thought it was really cool.
I mean, I'm sort of inherently fascinated by this idea of someone who's gotten into one of these bright fantasy worlds that we're sort of talking about, but they've come from such a dark one. I think that's a really cool spin on sort of grim dark / brighter high fantasy. You're kind of getting the best of both worlds. It's cool.
Yeah, like the beginning really, really emphasizes that the air that day was clearer than most, no smog or stench from an offering infecting the sky, making way for the seaweed green moon to hang low. The lack of those black clouds let me know I was in new territory. So yeah, that really set the scene for me, especially on the second read through, once I knew what was going on, and really seeing the stark contrast between the old land and the new. So.
And I think honestly, that would be one thing that would implement more so going back through, because honestly, up until I decided for the Yal him, I think that's what I called him, to basically say like, so the lie worked, huh? And then thinking that maybe this main character isn't like coming from a very peaceful type people. Maybe they're like the power hungry wizard clan, right? You know? And I feel that going back, that's something I would definitely want to implement more, because I see that as a huge part of the story that I'm trying to tell.
Yeah, there was a thing where like on the read through, that first paragraph really hits me a lot more, because I read that and then I went through the first time and I kind of forgot about where he had come from, and I wasn't thinking about it. So yeah, if you had, opening it this way is great, and then having another reminder of like, yes, back home everything's smog covered and sucks,
and grimy, yes.
Well, and bouncing off what you were saying about the sort of more invasion take, like I think that really fits the place that they came from with these gods who demand so much sacrifices. It would make sense that they're demanding that their influence grows as well. Yeah. So that, like, yeah, there's some really. I'm already in love with this world. Like, there's so much interesting stuff you could do with these two places you've created already. It's great.
Yeah, thank you.
On that idea of conquest, it's a lot easier to sacrifice something if you just took it from someone else, right?
Exactly. Exactly. But yeah, no. I don't know what to say.
That's okay. Yeah. So something else that's interesting. Again, talking about voice. I know I basically just talk about voice with you.
But voice is an important thing.
I will move on from it at some point. I promise.
once I get more than one voice going.
Well, that's actually what I'm going to talk about. Is that okay? So you have there's three people talking in this. There is the main character, a couple lines. There's the him, and then there's like one line from an old wizard master when he's like before he leaves.
Oh yeah,
it's like a little flashback.
Old professor. Yes.
So the old flashback is definitely 100% in your voice. It is. Before I left academia, my professor spoke unto me, which is nice. That's a different voice. Unto me, you don't normally write that. The words his professor did before him. When on a quest for knowledge, come with nothing. Preconceived notions and well-fluffed egos do nothing but filter the knowledge to an unnecessary layer. A layer by your design, the layer that separates the wizards from the charlatans. So, like, 90% of this is new voice, and I love it. Mm-hmm. Like it's this interesting... I love the phrasing. I love... I like the concept as well. I mean, it's... Obviously, it's not, like, a new idea, but
no, yeah.
But this is exactly what a wizard professor would say.
It's like giving you a little bit into the world.
Yeah.
So what's that 10%?
But the 10% where it's like it's this phrasing of like I can hear you saying it. Preconceived notions and well fluffed egos do nothing but filter the knowledge. Like that particular section is like if it was presented to me out of context, 90% chance I would guess it was you.
Which I get it. I mean,
it's not that like that should never like I want to be able to detect your voice, but it's like it doesn't depart quite enough from the narration. You know,
I think that's because I've noticed actually within my own writings that I tend to hop to phrases that are generalized and grandiose.
Yes,
in a sense.
I think I know what you're talking about.
I think it's because I really like those phrases, but I use them too often. Yeah. I use them quite often, and so.
But I do want to point out that this is like I mean I did really like it. So like this normally I harp on that way too much, but like this is this is huge progress. I think this is cool. And then the other dialogue with the other guy, it sounded like a different character. It didn't sound like your voice at all. It might just be because he has very short lines and not that many of them.
Sure.
But like I was picturing an entirely different. I was picturing like this like scratchy old man voice, like a high pitched like a short guy. You know, who's talking. It's old, and he's like, what does it say? Or ending with "Welcome to a better world" is great.
With a hug.
Yes.
Nonetheless.
Yes.
When I was writing that character, have y'all seen Kung Fury?
Yes.
I've seen some of it. It's the one. It's like the 30-minute little. Yeah. 30 minutes. It's very good.
Fantastic thing. There's one scene I think they call upon Thor.
Yes.
That old man Thor is what I see this character as.
Okay. Yeah. It's
like still definitely an old man, but kind of ripped. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I want to. Yeah, it's a different voice, and I very much liked it.
Well, thank you. I think that like one of the reasons why I like writing this one so much is because I'm trying to step away from sci-fi. I love sci-fi, but I do find that when I do sit down to write a sci-fi, I use the exact same tropes, and I think I've kind of gotten stuck in this like path, right?
Yeah.
I might get burned down. So I think the reason why I like writing this one so much is because since I'm stepping into a new genre, quotes, I'm able to try new things. Yeah. I think with that, because I know at first when I was coming up with this idea, the initial name for it was Psychedelic Wizard. And I saw him as like walking through this cave with a summon that he got after going here, and the summon is actually just like he's a one-man band, who plays stoner rock.
Of course, and you take your inspiration so literally.
I do, and I really hate it. I
love it,
but the power of this summon is that the song starts off really, really fast, but then when there's when a bad guy comes, it slows down, and once it gets to its slowest point, it casts slow on the other person.
Sure.
So like the tempo of battle is matched to the summons play.
That's fun.
But that was the first thought that I had. I don't know where I was going with that.
It was a fun idea.
It was a very fun idea, but I decided that'll be too hard to really have to explain so much, so I decided to start at the beginning.
Any other thoughts, Elliot?
I mean, no, I think I've already sort of said, like, I really liked it. I'm not as familiar with your tone of voice as Matthias, so it didn't jump out to me particularly. I thought it all fit quite nicely.
And you like not to put you on the spot, but you've listened to other episodes of Do the Right Thing, right? So
yeah.
So I would say that means it's a success. Like, I'm very familiar with Jarvis's work, obviously, because I've read every single one of these stories and more, right? And so I'm intimately familiar with it. But like, if you have a passing familiarity with it, it didn't strike you as like too similar to anything else.
No, it struck me as very different to the handful that I'm familiar with.
Yeah. So I would call that a success.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, out of all the ones I've written, I felt the best about this. I'm going to, literally, when I leave here, I'm going to go home, turn on Dope Smoker by Sleep, and just write more.
Okay, fantastic.
I'm just really excited.
I would love to see that. One other thought that strikes me is so on the ending, I feel that like the Welcome to a Better World is so much of a better ending point than the next paragraph.
See, I wanted to end it there. I really did. But the issue was I don't know what the purpose of the story would be, because like I feel that starting from the beginning, there was obviously a reason why he's going to this place. And I feel okay. The best way that I could make it to where that would be the last lie is if I put in even more so during the journey how this land is quote unquote not supposed to be there. There isn't supposed to be magic in this land. So him just getting there is the like reprieve. That's what we're there
I completely
for.
agree. In fact, like as I was taking mental notes, and I specifically was thinking, I think to make this better, you would cut the ending, but like emphasize the ending, like create more of a build up to the ending of Welcome to a Better World. Because Welcome to a Hug and Welcome to a Better World is like that's you cut already. Like,
I did
so
cut.
You cut.
Yeah.
And so you already have this feeling of like that's a stopping point for a scene, and you just need a little bit more emphasis on like this is the culmination of a journey to make it like stick.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty easy fix.
No,
I think
that's
like
I just simply need to delete the last paragraph, and then probably between when I'm describing the mushrooms and when he gets to the clearing, I can just
make it more difficult.
Yeah. Go over here. Go through the marshes. I know. When I was first thinking of it, in this forest, there are like animals and rats and like critters and all that, but they're harmless. But the only harmful thing actually is those sacks of that like sweet liquid.
Sure.
They can sometimes burst, and the seeds are the size of coconuts.
Okay.
And they've killed people in the past.
Just from falling?
Yes.
That sounds fun.
If a coconut falls on your head, you will die.
Okay. If a coconut falls and no one's around to get killed by it,
is it a murderer?
Yeah.
Well, no, it didn't kill anyone.
Oh, solved it.
All right. So aside from the things we already talked about, very quickly, if you were to rewrite this, what would you change?
If I were to rewrite it, honestly, everything that we've said thus far is really spot on. I would say if I were to rewrite it, I would want to sit down and ponder and think about a lot more where he's coming from.
Sure.
Because if I know, the ins and outs of where he's coming from
and why he's going,
then I feel it'll be a better story. And then when he does get there, I can use all the information that I've built up from then to actually make that ending stick.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's been something I've run into writing stories in this format as well, as you often don't have a clear picture of where you're going when you start, and you sort of get to the end, and then you're like, oh, okay, and like you sort of think in a second pass I could really clarify that.
Yeah.
It's just a symptom of the format.
Yeah, go ahead, Jarvis.
Oh yeah, it's so weird. I have that exact same feeling. Yeah. Just when you get to like the exact same wording, like okay. Well, once you finish it.
Yeah, I wonder. I really. There's so many challenges I want to add to myself of like to go back and look at the stories, but I just don't have the time to like really fairly give myself those challenges. I mean, December I will. I'm going to do so many things in December. I'm going to go off the walls because I don't have classes in December.
Decembo Remo.
Yes.
Or Remo.
But yeah, there's so many things I just want to go back and redo because doing the right thing is just such a great way to just get the idea out and get something on paper.
But I think the best thing about, at least for me, after doing the right thing is that you have a blueprint. To where if you really care about it, you can go in and say, all right, I've already talked about what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
Time to fix that and keep going.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like, because something that I think is an issue with NaNoWriMo and maybe the format of this cast too is you sort of get something down, but then you never go back and look at it.
Right.
Like, NaNoWriMo needs to be followed up by, like, December Fixmo.
Yeah,
Where you go back and redo it.
I really like that, honestly.
Yeah, and like I think there are probably some stories that I've written for this show that I'd love to go back and tweak a bit or expand a bit.
Yeah, and
I'm sure that's true for most people.
Yeah, I would love to like do that as part of the show, but we're already so long. It's like I can't justify. Adding another 30-minute section where we revisit an old story.
What we could do is we have so Do the Right Thing comes out bi-weekly. Bi-monthly. Every other week.
Okay.
But in those weeks that there isn't a Do the Right Thing, we do the edit thing.
Okay.
Where we sit down, we take the idea of whatever we wrote, and then we edit it, and then for the whole time we're talking about that, talking about what we changed, and then we talk about the differences, and it's a good time for us to just chill and hang out and talk.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or even if it was just like every month or two, there was a Do the Edit thing.
Exactly.
It's a bit of an event.
Yeah. Well, okay, so as a middle ground, we could also just like, as a thing of words, we could go back and redo an old story.
Yeah. Because I feel that one thing that is the most important part of writing, which is missing from the process that we go through on this podcast, is the rewriting. Is the because we do critique it, but then sometimes it stops there. And I feel that us and the viewers should be focusing a lot more on the after first draft than just the first draft.
And there's a lot of the same things that happen, every time. And I feel like we just need a bunch of acronyms also just to communicate these things very quickly. If I were going to go back, I would, write this knowing that, right? Like I would figure this out first, when that happens and stuff like that. Like why butt? I've referred to that.
Why butt?
Yeah, you're being unfair to Taylor.
First, I would use why butts.
Okay, so these are ideas. Well, maybe we'll do them. Maybe we'll keep this in the episode. Well, who knows?
Yeah, we will see. We're already at now.
I kind of like the idea of do the edit thing, but I don't want to replace I don't want to have a week where we don't do the right thing because then it's like people doing it on a schedule.
We could make it like a monthly Patreon exclusive.
Maybe, perhaps. Okay, well let's talk about me this time. Let's move into me.
Who are you? You said that you really liked your 17-page story.
Yeah, it was actually for real 5 pages, and I wasn't double spaced or anything like that. It was originally 2,200 words, and I cut it down to 2,000 words. So progress. I did not mean it for it to be as long as it is, but it just it took forever to get to the point where I wanted it to be, and then by then every paragraph had something that was relevant, that I could just cut paragraphs, and then we had to record. So
exactly ran out of time.
So yeah, before we even get into it, I know that I could cut this down by half and still have the same meaning.
Well, I think that's prime example of why you should do the editing.
Exactly. And there's some other things I specifically want to talk about after I read it, but the length is obvious. So this story is called Cinnamon Rolls. Marge checks the clock on the oven. 4 hours till he gets home. She breathes. More than enough time. She dusts the flour on her hands off. It's always so surprising that so much gets on her hands when she's just pouring it into a bowl. So messy. She picks up a rag and goes to wet it. But no, that would waste time. She can just clean it while the rolls are baking. The lighting in the kitchen is poor, an unfortunate filtered yellow, but she prefers it to those stark fluorescents. They're so soulless. So she's dragged in the lamp from the living room, and it's nice and bright and warm. She loves that lamp. It's almost as tall as her, and it's bright, and the base is this beautiful carved statue of a mermaid wrapped around the lamp pole, as if it was the mast of a shipwreck, the captain long gone, but a new home being made. Or maybe she's clinging to the mast of a still sailing ship, waiting and hopeful for her captain to come back. Or for her captain to stay away. Marge is never sure. She'll have to move it when she's done, but for now it makes the kitchen nice and cheery and warm. But she stared at the lamp too long, so she gets to work. The flour is in the bowl, and now she cracks eggs into it. 2, just right. She's very good at cracking eggs. Excellent, in fact. Then half a stick of butter, pre-melted. Then a dash of butter flavoring, because real butter isn't quite flavorful enough to stand out. Then a dollop of vanilla, and finally a quarter cup of milk. Marge loves this part, has loved it ever since she was little. She mixes the mixture that will become dough with an old crank mixer. The mixture swirls, the milk overtaking and devouring the dry flour, streaking in a scintillating swirl. She turns on the oven to preheat. 3 hours left. She must have lost some time in the mixing. Silly her. She gets to kneading the dough, doing so in long strokes. Her fingers twinge at the knuckles. Oh, she feels like she's getting old, except she's not really that old. She just feels that way. In a moment, a feeling of being tired, so tired, sweeps over her shoulders, and she has to stop kneading. She finds herself looking at her hands. They're marked with bruises and scratches. Her pinky is bent in a slightly weird angle. If only she could stop from getting herself hurt. So careless. A chuckle escapes her. Hasn't that excuse gotten old? She's alone at home, and yet she's still thinking in excuses for him. The oven beeps. It's done preheating. The dough is mostly done, so she tries to get it done nice and quick, kneading it double time, ignoring the pain in her fingers crawling up her arms. She shapes the dough into a long snake, and then cuts it into little tubes. She puts them on the baking pan, curling them into swirls, with the end resting on top, like little sleeping snakes. She gets another bowl and starts mixing brown sugar and cinnamon. It's 2 hours till he gets home, which is still plenty of time. Some more melted butter goes on the flavorful mixture, and she tastes it, and between the brown sugar and the cinnamon and the lingering vanilla from the dough sticking under her tongue, she's in heaven. For a moment. She rolls the grains around in her mouth, and her nose feels full of it. It's rare she has these moments for herself, even when she's alone most of the time. She can't wait to have one. She's made 12 rolls, which is frustrating because if she eats one now, he'll notice, and she won't have another after that because he'll call her fat if she has 2. She resolves to eat one and then throw another away. That way there's an even 10 and he won't notice. She decides to put them in the oven as is. She sets a timer on the oven for 30 minutes. It's already 2 hours till, but still, plenty of time. It even should be just enough time for them to cool, right in time for him. Everything is fine. And now she rushes to get all ready. She puts away all the ingredients where they go and wipes down the counter, and puts the bowls in the sink to wash in a moment. She thinks she hears the door open and freezes, preparing herself to make her movements as smooth as possible. But it's nothing. So she washes the dishes as quick as possible, because dishes are noisy and make it hard for her to hear the door. With a start, she remembers she forgot to put the lamp away, and so she goes over and lifts the lamp, her hand gripping under the mermaid's throat. It might be disrespectful, but it's so much easier to hold it from there. She puts it back in the living room, the mermaid's face hidden behind the couch so only her hand is seen, grasping the pole of the lamp like the hand of a drowning man. She rushes back to the kitchen and dries off the bowls and puts them away. She switches out her apron for the clean one, the one that says, "Happy wife, happy life." He always gets a kick out of that one. She surveys the kitchen. All clean, or as clean as it can get under the grubby light. She wishes he could go out and fix it, but he gets mad anytime she mentions it now. But it's clean, so she allows herself a breath. The oven beeps, and she hops up to get them. She opens the oven and the heat hits her. She'll have to make time to freshen herself up, and in her rush, she almost grabs the pan by itself, but just in time she remembers to put on the oven mitts. No clumsiness this time. The rolls are golden and brown and perfect. Little swirls of snakes with little swirls of cinnamon glazing. She sets them under the windowsill and opens the window to let them cool. The air outside the apartment smells of sickly sweet rot and city, but the fragrance of cinnamon and sugar blows it out. Then she sits, and she waits. It's 30 minutes until he gets home. She won't know when exactly, because traffic and work keep him late. The minutes tick by. The rolls cool to just a little too hot, and Marge decides she had better have one now instead of chancing it later. She scarfs down a gooey, slightly painfully hot roll down. The cinnamon and sugar sliming her throat and the insides of her cheeks. She eats it over the sink, and goo drips down and splats, and the air is heady. She feels ridiculous, but she has to do this. She has to, and she wants to savor it, to actually let herself taste the vanilla, but it's too risky because her goddamn brute of a husband won't let herself have anything nice. She finds herself breathing hard, unsure what came over her. She turns on the sink and splashes some water on her face, getting the glaze off her face. She watches it swirl down the drain, down and down into the pit, and then to who knows where. She turns to the tray of cinnamon rolls and to the window. She has to get rid of one, now, and if she were to put it in the trash, she would see, or smell it. She picks one up, gripping it where there isn't glaze, and holds it out the window. She looks down, like she does every time. The apartment window overlooks an alley, far down. An alley that no one ever goes. She doesn't even know how she would get there if she left, because outside is a maze and she always gets lost without him, and he wouldn't want to go there. She drops the roll and it tumbles down. The wet smack of it against pavement echoes all the way back up. She can just barely make it out. A single, shiny brown circle amidst other brown circles. Dozens, hundreds even, of cinnamon rolls and cupcakes and slices of pie and brownies and splattered cake. A heap of sugar and rot. Numb. She's always numb after that. She sits down in the chair in the kitchen. Time passes. It's the time he normally arrives, and he's not here. And the rolls are getting cold now, cold as the air of garbage that sweeps in from the window. But she sits and waits. The snakes stare at her, sad little unformed faces drooped on their tails, frowning. Disappointed in her. She's just sitting there like she sat for 100 days and a dozen years. A dozen years of this. Fury overtakes her like it never has before, a flavor flooding in from the stem of her brain. She wants to throw the whole tray of ungrateful, pathetic little snakes out the window like with everything else, to take them away from herself like he takes so much away from her. But no, the snakes whisper to her. Marge, they say, we can help you. And they can. They just need a little venom. They just need a little venom. There's bleach in her hands, and she drapes it over the rolls, frosting them beautifully, and the snakes are smiling, happy to do their part. But to tell her that the bleach will taste too strong, he would notice, so she sprinkles brown sugar and cinnamon on top. And she's done, and he's still not home, and the rolls are cold now, and he refuses to eat cold pastries. So she takes them and puts them back in the oven, setting it to 150 degrees. Hot, but not too hot. They'll warm up. They'll just warm up. She shuts the window to shut the garbage smell out, which seems to cloy to her sinuses, and she puts the bleach away. And she waits. He takes so long to come home. Hours. Something must have happened at work. And normally that would worry her. Normally she would be cleaning or doing laundry or freshening herself up with nervousness and poise at the same time. But not today. Tonight she is calm and at peace. The doorknob rattles. He's home. Marge stands, dusts herself off, and goes to the oven. He opens the door, and his footsteps are angry. His coat is thrown to the couch. "Marge," he says, his voice rattling the walls. "In the kitchen, honey," and she keeps her voice dripping with sweet. He comes in the kitchen, and she doesn't turn to greet him. Instead, she opens the oven. Smoke billows out, acrid and burning. It hits her like a train of burning acid bricks, searing her face and her throat. She sees the snakes in the air, circling her, coiling about the room, swirling. The venom, she thinks, delirious. It must have burned. The air splits, cracks in a high-pitched whine, the smoke alarm wailing. She collapses to the floor and hits her head. How clumsy. He grabs her and turns her to face him, and his eyes are full of bloodshot fury, and he slams her against the tile, his head her head cracking against the tile, and he is screaming something at her, but his voice is hoarse. The veins are sticking out all over. The veins on his face are sticking out all over. The snakes swirl around him, a whirlpool, green with glowing red eyes, and they constrict around his throat and into his eyes and his nose and his mouth. He's breathing it in. Black presses in around her. She hasn't breathed more than a breath since she opened the oven. But that was enough. She can't feel his grip on her throat anymore, and soon she knows he won't be able to feel anything either. The venom did its work. Hold on, there was one more line, and I missed copy-pasting it. The venom did its work. As she slips down the drain, one of the snakes smiles at her, and she smiles back. They always were so cute. And that's the end of the story.
Well, I quite like that a lot. It was a very tasty story.
Tasty story. Tasty, bleachy story.
Nice and bleachy. Just how I like my cinnamon rolls. But no, yeah, it was fantastic. The twist, I saw it coming, but at the same time, it came about pleasantly. Because there was so much niceness. You created such a perfect atmosphere for this house. This woman at home just cooking and doing these little things. But as it went on, you noticed that something was definitely wrong. And I love how you didn't just give it to us. You left the breadcrumbs slowly, and there was a nice escalation throughout it up until the ending, which, I mean, the ending speaks for itself.
I mean, it sort of was an undertone that builds and builds, and then I think it's the point where she finally just calls her husband a brute. That you're like, okay, this is happening. And yeah, I agree with Jarvis. I think, the fact that she's going to try and kill him is something you're kind of hoping / expecting is going to happen. But the added twist of how, they get cold, so she sort of has to cook them, and then they start to, explode and everything, is just enough of a change on exactly what your expectations are that it still feels really good when it happens, and really unexpected, on a level.
Yeah, it's something that I was aiming for pretty early on. I'm not sure how surprising the murder thing was, because I ended up cutting some stuff, and as I was reading it, I was noticing, oh, that was supposed to refer to the paragraph I cut. Oh well.
Oh really?
So that happened a couple times, but it should be mostly okay. But I had some more explicit stuff about him just being a terrible husband and very obviously being abusive. So I don't know if it was too subtle or...
Well, I think where it is it's good. Because I feel if there would have been more, I feel it would have sadly been too much to where you're beating the audience over the head with the idea of, oh, this is a bad guy, he deserves to die. And I like where you get these subtle hints, but you don't get he's overtly a terrible, evil person. You can tell that, it's not working, and that he's definitely a brute, and he does these horrible things, but he's not a mass murderer, in a sense. I think that's what makes the ending that much better, because you don't fully side with her killing her husband, in a sense. Or at least I don't.
Okay.
At least that's how I'm reading it, in a sense.
No, I agree. I like the sort of escalation from as you start planting those initial seeds. There's like you start to wonder, and then it keeps going, and you start to get more sure, and then it just sort of becomes explicit. And I think that actually works really well. So I agree with Jarvis. I'd sort of probably keep that how it is with the slow build up to revealing how terrible he is.
Okay, cool.
Because I definitely feel that's what the strength of this is. Like,
the slow burn.
Yeah, the slow burn.
Yeah.
I liken it to when you're reading a scene from like a horror novel, and it's like, oh, but this is here, and then that's there, but I didn't tell you about the blood on the ceiling.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
You know.
Yeah, I was trying to like have a build up and then kind of spike with him calling him a brute.
Yeah.
And then kind of go down just a little bit before like going into the final climax. She's gonna make poison and stuff.
Yeah, and I definitely do get that flow. I feel that when you use the word brute, of course, it told you everything that you needed to know.
Okay.
I'm not sure in myself if that was giving us too much, because I feel that you can definitely keep this place in a place where you're not giving us everything. Like you're not going to explicitly tell us like this is the reason. I
actually originally had that as a bit of feedback as well. As like the bit where it was suddenly she just used the word brute. I was like, oh, this is a bit of a change. It's so much more explicit. But I think it's directly followed up by her commenting where she's unsure what's come over her. So I kind of like it as a moment for her as well as for us. Like I was sort of taken aback. I was like, oh, wait, suddenly she's so much more aware of how awful he must be. And then she's sort of like, oh, what's happening to me? So I kind of liked it for that. It sort of hit me, and then it was like, oh no, it's hitting her too.
Yeah, I had it as a moment of like she realizes it for a moment before like trying to push the thought away, because you can't like you can't be fully aware of that while also living in the situation and also like baking him stuff, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, okay. So it was at a decent level, which is good to hear. So on some other stuff, as I was finishing up, I realized I was trying to do like a lot of different kind of things regarding metaphor, sort of. Like I have the mermaid statue at the beginning.
Yes, I love the bit where she puts it back behind the couch, and there's the line about how you can only see the hand like a drowning man.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you like that. Well, it's interesting because like none of that was like super intentional. It was kind of like, hey, this is what's coming out right now, and mermaid statue. Why not?
Well, it definitely felt like another breadcrumb.
Yeah, I was like, okay, she has a lamp. Why does she like the lamp? It's got a statue. It reminds her of the situation. That makes sense. Let's do a metaphor. But I also had like the swirling as a common motif, and also out of the window throwing the cinnamon roll on a giant pile of other stuff. I don't know how well all of these things worked. I don't know if they needed more attention or anything.
I feel that with that very last one, of throwing it on other stuff, I know when I was reading, I had to read that twice because I wasn't sure if that was real.
Okay.
Because it kind of it's in this place where you can't. At least when I was reading, you couldn't trust every word that was coming out of the mouth of this
because the snakes
character.
are talking.
Exactly, and it's like, are the snakes really talking? Are they not? So I feel with that moment of her throwing the cinnamon rolls on a pile of other sweets. I feel that you can play into the metaphor more so, to where we know that it is a metaphor and not real, or you just make it real.
Yeah.
But I felt like where it is right now, I wasn't sure if I could make heads or tails of it.
Sure.
That's just me.
I mean, something that sort of started to jump out to me towards the end was this idea of...
Actually, you can talk. I'll just mute my section over here. So there's police, like, sirens. Okay. That's all. You can continue talking. Sorry.
I'm very used to this. Ruben's house is like under an airport line.
Oh, fun.
So
wow.
We get interrupted by planes fairly regularly. So something that started to jump out to me a bit towards the end was this idea of, obviously, our point of view character here is kind of snapping after years of this sort of abuse. and like I was connecting that to this idea of the way she's baking. You know, this what's about to happen has been cooking in the oven.
Oh, okay.
And like I guess I had this idea of the bit where she's eating the cinnamon roll. If there was like a little extra hot pocket of butter or something in it that like burns her, that starts to seed the idea of poisoning him or something, as well as a kind of continuation and all that. I don't know.
Yeah, that would work really well. Something like that for sure. I mean, I already have a bit where she like kind of rushes it because she's lost track of time. So like it would make sense if there was some grossness in it.
Some hot butter.
Yeah.
I mean, that was something I wasn't sure if I should comment on because I don't know enough about baking to know if this is... But there's a bit where she says it's like 4 hours till he comes home, and then she's just sort of mixed the dough together, and suddenly it's like 2 hours till he gets home. And so I was like, has she spaced out, or is that just something that actually takes 2 hours? And
it was supposed to be more of a spacing out thing.
Okay.
It takes some time. Like it, you know, the whole thing would take like up to like 30 minutes probably, but yeah, not 2 hours.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
It takes 2 hours to bake a brisket.
So I think that worked. I just wasn't confident because of my own lack of knowledge, not because.
Yeah, I opened up a recipe website, and that's where I got all the ingredients and stuff. I don't actually know how to make cinnamon rolls. I was just reading off the site.
Well, now you do.
Yeah.
Apparently it's pretty easy.
You can fake your knowledge pretty easily, guys. Yeah. That's where I got the thing about the butter flavor, because apparently you're supposed to put butter flavor if you're making buttery cinnamon rolls.
Not just butter?
Mm-hmm.
So butter flavor.
Butter flavoring, yeah.
I'd never heard of that.
Yep.
So it's like condensed, congealed butter.
I have no idea what it is.
It's butter. It's that
it's
powder
actually,
that they put over the
margarine.
Margarine?
No, the...
Margarine, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It feels like the sort of thing that I'd buy to bake something and then just kind of be, you know, if it comes in a tube or something, I'd be like, I'm just going to squirt some into my mouth real quick and then make myself really sick and I'll never cook it again.
Sounds like a plan. So on another level, something that I did want to talk about related to her losing track of time and kind of going crazy. I've noticed this is a kind of thing that I fall back on pretty often. Like last week, I had a thing about, you know, zoning out and losing track of time with the boy. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe either the week before that or a couple weeks before that, I had another story where they kind of go crazy. And it's, I think it's just, I fall back on it because it's easier because it means I don't have to write about time passing. I can just like make things happen because they're losing their mind or whatever. Yeah. Like she could just have bleach in her hands now. I don't have to make her actually go through the process of thinking, I should kill my husband. I can just like have her do it, you know?
Yeah. I feel
it adds one thing narrative disconnection between her and her actions. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one thing that can make that work a little bit more is if within those moments of zoning out, you feel that with something. Mm-hmm. Because right now it's this happens and then this happens.
So maybe something about like her thinking of like, he came home one night. Exactly. I mean, this is too literal of an example.
It's like if you follow the zoning out, because when someone zones out, they're thinking of something.
Right.
Yes?
What is the memory she's losing herself
exactly.
in? And then
what they're thinking of is
when we snap back to the present, she's holding the bleach.
So then you don't have to like spell out she went to the cabinet, did the bleach and all that, but you gave the audience a moment to be with the character so that when she just has the bleach, you get it, but it's still like, this is happening now, in a sense.
Okay. So on the other end, though, the next story I do will not have a character going crazy.
Great,
because I want to continue branching out, doing different things.
Is it a character going sane?
We'll see. Yeah, but also I need to examine what my other stories are because I don't know what kind of groups they form. I just know that this is one clear category where some stories of mine directly fall into directly. But yeah, I just want to get away from doing the same thing every time.
And the purpose of doing the right thing is to branch out as much as possible. Mm-hmm. Even if those branches fall off and become seed packets.
Okay. All right. Anything else you guys want to say about the story?
I have one thing. Mm-hmm. Right? So, going back, if you can change anything, making it shorter, actually.
Yeah.
Let's think about making some of these parts more concise. Is there anything within this that you think is not crucial to the point that you're trying to make?
I feel like I really don't have to spend that much time on the actual baking process and everything, and I can just do like one metaphor, like either all of the things dumped out the window, or the statue, or the swirling. Like I can just do one of them. Yeah. I could cut this down by probably 50%. I feel like.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I'd be careful with that though, because I think the slow burn to this story was part of what really drew me in. So, yeah, I maybe it's just it's just a story that has to be a bit longer. I agree. Maybe something like the mermaid statue could get cut and you save a bit there, but maybe this just isn't a great do the right thing story because it needs to be a bit longer. I don't know.
Yeah, it could also. At the very least, I think I could keep the same word count and make it more efficient in, like, telling more of her circumstances and getting us to know more about this character other than the fact that she is kind of going mad and also is being abused.
Because I feel this story doesn't need to be longer. Because it's already at this point, and what you are... And the events that are happening, they're very confined.
Okay.
Like, it's this one moment. And it's all leading up to the husband getting there. Mm-hmm. So you have a definite end and a pretty solid beginning.
So, like, this length is definitely, like, a maximum length.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least that's what I feel.
I agree. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. We'll see if I ever return to this. We'll just see.
I mean, apparently it's your bread and butter.
My bread and butter flavor. Yep.
Ooh, bread and butter flavor.
Okay. All right. That's all I have to say about my story. So let's talk about our wonderful guest story, Elliot. Yeah. What should we know going into your story?
And we don't have to know anything. Could just be nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you should know that I'm feeling more insecure about it, and having heard both of yours, because I feel like both of yours were extra good this week.
Well, thank you.
The actual context, I guess, of this. Someone who was a big influence in sort of both my life and the life of many people I grew up with passed last week. And that was sort of it was a big thing, and I actually sort of wrote this story the evening after attending the funeral. And so I guess this is just sort of me processing a bit of that, I guess.
Yeah, that's more than a valid way to write, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I guess that's just sort of the context of why I wrote a weird story like this.
I mean, having already read it, I don't think it's that weird, but yeah, we'll go into it.
Okay, so I have titled this one Passing Impact. Doug wasn't sure where to sit, or maybe stand. What the hell was someone meant to do at their own funeral? Of course, he could sit or stand anywhere. He passed through objects as if he wasn't even there, but he still felt the need to sit or stand somewhere appropriate. He was reminded of the feeling when he wasn't sure what to do with his hands, but in this case it was his whole body. Well, body. His body was in the casket over in front of the podium. He knew because despite his proximity to it, he felt less connected to it than ever. He felt it pushing him away more strongly. His instinct was to sit up front, with his family. He wanted to follow that impulse, but he wasn't sure he could. He'd spent a lot of time in the days after his passing, trailing his family, but his inability to impact the world, or to assuage their grief, had been maddening. What was a father or a husband's role, if not to protect or to calm? He took a seat in the edge of a pew, a few rows behind his family, next to his childhood friend Jeremy. He'd seen Jeremy only a year ago, at their 30-year school reunion. They'd promised each other they'd catch up again soon. It was probably a bit late for that now. Jeremy would never see him again, and Doug would never have the chance to make that time for Jeremy. Doug stood, tense, as the service got underway. Hymns had been boring in life, but the butterflies in his stomach made them excruciatingly dragged out now. For some reason, his boss was the first person to speak. He talked at length about how great Doug had been at work, of the positive impact he'd brought on so many students' lives. Jeremy was next. His eulogy focused much more on their childhood together. The time that Doug had convinced him to go on a 5-day hike, during what had turned out to be the hottest week on record. how Jeremy had not only made it through because of Doug's encouragement, but how in the end he'd discovered a passion for hiking and exploring through Doug. Doug missed most of his daughter's speeches. They were too painful to focus on. The bits he did catch broke his heart as they spoke of his guidance and of how everything he taught them had turned them into the women they were today and would be going forward. The last speaker took Doug a few seconds to recognise. A young man, his face had had significantly less hair and more acne the last time Doug had seen him. George, a former student, opened his speech with an anecdote of a time Doug had helped him personally, how Doug had impacted his life. From there, George didn't carry forward with more about their relationship. Instead, he had reached out to the alumni network of the school, asked others to share their stories. What followed was an incredible list of moments, some touching, some heartwarming, and others just hilarious. All of which highlighted the impact Doug had had on the students. Overwhelmed like never before, Doug lost track of time. Hearing of all these students, who they were now, what they felt his part in that was. Something clicked. He turned to Jeremy, a man, spry for his age, sitting next to his wife, a woman he'd met through a hiking group he'd joined after discovering the hobby with Doug. He turned to his daughters, who, despite their own clear grieving, were working to support their grandmother, as well as others. He stood, turning, and finally saw the size of the procession. Hundreds of past and present students and families were in the church, many standing in the back or upstairs due to a lack of seats. Doug let out a sigh, choking back a tear. He felt his body begin to blow away, disintegrating and losing its form. He was moving on, but he understood now. He wasn't gone. The end.
That was a fantastic story. Mm-hmm. I really, really loved it. I always like stories that talk about the after. Mm-hmm. That's just something they're very fascinated with. And your telling of it gave me like a really good feeling, like in a sense, because there was this character who, of course, is saddened by their passing, but then over time you see more and more people go up, and you realize, oh, like a person is beyond just their physical body. Like they even say that the person that was laying in the casket wasn't familiar with them, or wasn't familiar to them, or they were being pulled away from that body. So yeah, I don't know, it just gave me a really great feeling, and it's a fantastic read. I really liked it.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, as I sort of touched on, this is sort of loosely based on someone who I recently lost, and the whole community lost, and that was sort of the real sense I had. I mean, this is something, I don't know if this is just me, I feel like it's a weird thing I do, but whenever I'm at a funeral, part of me is always wondering what the person who's passed would think at their own funeral. Right. And that was sort of the genesis for this sort of idea is somebody who's had such a big impact on others but was a fairly private person coming to terms with the fact that they've had such a huge impact on other people.
Yeah. What I like about it is that it doesn't start at that moment. Well, like you start with this frustration of this character to impact the world because they're dead, right? Like they can't comfort anyone and stuff like that. And of course, as you go, like you explain that impact has already been felt. But the way that kind of ramps up, you don't start with the students talking about, how they were impacted. You start with a boss, the Doug's boss talking, and Doug being confused, be like, this is okay. And so we kind of take that as like, okay, that's like, I mean, I'm sure that the boss was like affected, but that's kind of like a cut and dry, like very, like not a lot of emotional investment to just be a productive worker, Yeah. And then of course you go into of course the daughters are going to be, have important things to say. But then you have the student who then like branches out into this other like a much larger group. So you kind of go from like the obvious and less important into the non-obvious and important. So I thought that was a good way to like broaden the scope of his impact in a natural way that like we can discover it just as Doug does.
Yeah.
I just spoke a lot.
Yeah. I mean, as I originally started writing, he was actually with like a Grim Reaper, a sort of death embodiment, and they were having a conversation. But I got about 5 minutes into writing that before I was like, the last thing the world needs is another person talking to death after they've passed the story.
Yeah.
And so that was when I sort of reworked it into it just being him. So originally, death was going to guide him towards this realization that his impact was more widespread, but I had to come up with a way for him to have that happen to himself. And the idea was... something more foreign that kind of, breaks through any mental blocks you may have on your own.
Yeah. So related to that, of there just being a lot of the talking to death things. So something that I recognize in this is that like I've definitely seen this kind of message before, right? But I think obviously it's one of those things where like everything's already been done before, and I think it's just that like. This is a story with a clear message, right? And so by identifying it, you can see it in all the other times you've seen it.
And also, it's very earnest.
Yeah, I agree. But I just to finish the thought, where I'm going with that is that like with something like my story where there's not like a clear message because there's not a message, it's just like random stuff, right? Like you look at that and you probably don't recognize it, like. Well, actually, maybe that one's actually pretty obvious too. But my point being, it's like the fact that I can recognize this message and like see that it's been done before is like only because it's clear and recognizable and it executes that message well. Does that am I making sense?
No, I completely agree because I didn't feel like I was breaking any new ground. I think all of us have dealt with some sort of death in the past, and this is a sort of process of thoughts that everyone's probably gone through at some point. But yeah, like I think for me it was an exercise in trying to clarify some of those feelings. So I'm glad that's sort of how it came across.
Yeah. So to talk about that, going through the feelings, like just you don't have to expose your emotions right now on this audio podcast. But like, how was that journey? Like, were you emotionally affected while you were writing it, or was it more of an intellectual thing? Or
I think by the time I finally sat down to do it, it was a bit more intellectual. But this is something that was sort of I was processing even as I was sort of leaving the funeral, if that makes sense. Like the idea sort of there to work through this by writing it down, I guess, was something that sort of was something that was kind of good to distract myself with after the event, and especially I think this is far and away the most emotionally driven thing I've written for Do the Right Thing. I usually tend to fall on xenofiction or something distinctly non-human, and something I've been trying to do with Do the Right Thing is broaden my horizons and challenge myself, and so that was sort of where I went this week. This is something I'm not usually comfortable doing at all, and so it was good. Even if I don't think I broke any new ground or did anything super fantastic, it's good to have sort of done something different and seen what I can do in a different area.
Yeah, and like Jarvis was saying, it's very genuine.
Yeah, it's very genuine. I think that's where strength definitely lies. In a sense, there's this focus to it. And as you said already, there's a purpose. And I feel that is why I enjoy reading it so much. That's why I think there's so much there, because it's not trying to build a world. It's not trying to set up anything.
Right, you're not explaining the afterlife of ghosts and how when your soul, right, gets put next to your funeral, and then you collect this emotional energy.
It's just a funeral told from the perspective of the deceased, looking over the people that they love and trying to grasp the idea of the afterlife, and at the end being comfortable with it in a certain extent, because their impact is felt still.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because that was something that was an impulse I was actively fighting most of the time I was writing. It was, I did keep typing out sentences that were getting much too bogged down in the mechanics of being a ghost, basically, and I kept trying to be like, no, that's not what this is.
Right. Yeah, if I would ask you to cut anything in this, it would probably just be some of the very beginning as he's talking about being a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, I mean, I enjoyed some of it, especially the futility of trying to comfort people. But, like, it definitely, after you read the whole thing and then you reread the very first parts of just, like, the awkwardness of where to put his hands and stuff like that, it definitely, like, kind of brings it down a little bit.
Because I think, like, a ghost has been in media and novels and everything for so long that you don't have to explain it that much. If you just say a ghost that doesn't have, like, arms, then people can instantly picture it in some way, shape, form, or fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's just I think it's my instinct to write stuff like that. So yeah, I probably needed to fight it even more.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's great about it is that after the very beginning, after you get into the actual emotions, it completely goes away, and it doesn't bog us down anymore.
Okay, yeah.
So, I mean, what's well done about this is just how focused it is, and how you don't stray from this particular, like, what this message you're going for is, and I think that's probably because you were already thinking about it before you sat down, right?
Yeah. I think the time I sort of spent clarifying it in my head before actually sitting down for the 30 minutes made a big difference in that regard. Yeah.
Is there anything specific that you want to talk about in it?
No, I mean, I guess not really. I think maybe one bit that I just sort of injected myself into the story that I could probably afford to cut is the bit about hymns being boring. That was just something.
Oh yeah.
That might have just been me kind of pushing my own opinions into the story, and it probably doesn't actually help the story in any way.
I mean, if Doug thinks it, I think it fits okay.
I mean, it is definitely characterization. I mean,
yeah.
I think the basis for that idea was obviously he's the character and the person in real life were both affiliated with a school, and the funeral adapted a lot of the bits of the school routine. And I just, again, it was one of those things where I was wondering, this person sat through these thousands of times before. If they were at their own funeral, do you think that they'd, appreciate the routine or find it frustrating? And that's maybe an idea I would explore more going into it rather than just having it be one throwaway line about hymns. Right.
That makes sense. Well, it's good that you have, like, a whole, like, replacement idea already.
Yeah.
On a different angle, I like how you set up Jeremy before he comes in to speak, and how, like, in the beginning you really set up, like, the missed opportunity kind of thing of, like, oh, he's not going to hang out with Jeremy again, and he can't help his family and stuff like that. And I particularly love the line, as we discussed, where, like, he can't, comfort his family, and you have the line, what was a father or husband's role if not to protect or to calm? Which is, like, very much, like, I mean, I get that this is, like, very much like Doug's thinking, and the frustration just, like, comes across right there.
I wasn't sure about that line myself, because that's not necessarily my thinking, but if Doug's like a 50-year-old man, I thought it's probably more likely that is his sort of thinking. So that was sort of why I still went ahead and included it. Yeah,
I mean, regardless if that's, like, his actual philosophy, right? It, like if in real life, if someone asked him what the role of a husband was, I don't think he would say that. I think it's just that, like, he's frustrated, and that's how he phrases his frustration.
He's also looking back on his life and just a collection of ideas.
Yeah, so this is a really well done story. I don't know why you're so insecure about it.
Thanks.
Probably just because it's an emotionally vulnerable thing, but yeah, it's very well done.
Sorry, I took the podcast into a weird zone.
It's not weird at all. This is just a flat out good story.
I mean, really, at the end of the day, I feel that I know the reason that I got into writing is for therapeutic reasons. Mm-hmm. I wrote to express certain things that I was feeling, and I feel that kind of writing is just as important as writing a novel. It's what you get out of it. So, yeah, I'm very glad that you decided to write about this that just happened. Like,
yeah, I definitely stepped way out of my comfort zone doing this. That as I sort of talked about, knowing that I was going to be on the podcast this week, there was a temptation to just write some xenofiction or something in my comfort zone and try and do the best story I could in that regard, because there'd be a bit more focus on it this week. But I decided to not do that, and so I'm glad it's worked out to some extent.
It absolutely has. And yeah, so definitely just keep branching out. So finally, if you were to rewrite the story, what would you change?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we already sort of touched on some of it. I just feel like there's removing some of the unnecessary mechanical ghost talk, or either that or expanding the story and trying to work that in more. And some of the extra stuff about the hymns. But otherwise, I don't know, it was a bit of an exercise in just getting something down and maybe that's all it needs to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I hope to see more emotional stuff in the future. Cool. Okay, let's transition to the last big section of the podcast,
which
before our outro, and we announce the words. Yeah, so let's talk about our listener stories for this week.
First and foremost, thank you so much for anyone and everyone who submitted. Without your submissions, this podcast would be a little bit shorter, and it wouldn't even be here. So
yeah, it would be a lot less interesting. So this week's. Well, if you didn't get selected this week, that is okay. Every single time that you write, your chance of getting selected goes up, so keep that in mind. This week's selected stories are stories by Killinat, Quick Silvertongue, who was our guest last week, Clarence, Ace of Sword, was it Kippos? Kippos 21, and Bisexual Punch Party.
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone who submitted, and I'm looking forward to talking about your stories.
Right now.
Right now.
I don't know what you made it sound like. That's the end of the podcast. It's not.
That'd be crazy, right? If we just stopped.
Yes, just cut it off right there. If you have not read this week's stories, please do. They are absolutely fantastic, and we're absolutely going to spoil every single one of them. So please pause this recording, go and read the stories, and then come back and have us talk about them.
Exactly. Because if you don't read the stories, you have no clue what we're talking about.
That's not true. I think I summarized them, so you should have a clue. But it is much more worth actually reading the stories, especially because there's cool twists and stuff like that.
Yeah, but also think, you can read a summary of Lysistrata, but you didn't read Lysistrata.
Okay. So let's talk about Killinat's story, which is called Herald. So this reminded me of the tone of my story, because it's a very confused and time's kind of passing quickly and kind of crazy a little bit.
Exactly, yeah. And I think it's because there were definitely these moments where questions that come up very often. Go ahead and run through what is it?
So quick summary. The main character comes home, although they're not sure if it's their home, and in fact they view everything with a lot of confusion. They're not sure why they're there, or if this is their home or not, and they go in, and the tension really builds because it seems like there's some kind of supernatural, fearful thing going on.
Yeah.
But they go to the kitchen, and they see someone there who seems really scared and frightened, and it seems like they're doing something suspicious, and they have a conversation, and it's the main character kind of keeps saying things that they don't know why they're saying it, but they feel really remorseful, but through the dialogue we kind of pick up that the main character has run away or something like that, and they're away from Harold, who's their husband, who's the person there who seems suspicious but actually are loving. And they're married, and they both have rings, wedding rings.
Yeah.
I like the delivery of that little bit as well. It's not stated; it's just
yes, and it's a confirmation.
Well. Yeah.
because we suspected at that point, but the rings are like, oh, okay, cool. We can actually breathe easy for sure because we know.
I think like I really like the story. For me, it took two reads personally, only because just the way that it is written is very different. But I also appreciate that in a sense to where we are directly in this character's head within the confusion. I think it was handled very well because trying to portray confusion when it comes to writing is always very tricky because 9 times out of 10 you just end up confusing your audience.
Right. Yeah, but this is really well done because it's all like character.
Exactly. Yeah.
Character. Filtered confusion.
Yeah, it's very grounded.
He is holding a key. We know that he is holding a key. We don't know where it's from, and he doesn't know either.
And I think that's just like it's a testament to the way that it was written. It took me on a ride, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think the tension's created really well. Like, it's a sort of mystery at the start, and it gets you really invested into this sort of intense mystery. Like, this is probably more a testament on the sorts of stories I read, but I was immediately jumping to sort of sci-fi fantasy type explanations for what could be going on. And then as it unfolds, you just start to find out that this person has dementia, and it hits you really hard for that reason, because you've sort of built up in your head all these like great ideas for what this mystery could be, and it turns out it's just something very personal and painful, and that really hits you because of that.
Yeah. I want to pull out just 2 lines because I like them very much. Near the end, my head felt so cloudy, I was swimming without air. So just a really pain how confused and foggy they feel. Yeah,
that sounds like a lyric from an R&B song.
All right.
One specifically sung by me.
So the next story we're going to cover is by Quick Silvertongue, which is Clarence from last week.
Stagnant Air. Which, absolutely love the title, first and foremost. But
yeah, also, something that I noticed last time, but Clarence, he writes, like, he doesn't use capitalization at the start of sentences, which I think is a fun, just a fun, different way of writing, which is interesting. But so this story has this person who has sort of been baking something, but not really well, and he's going out to like the window and he's smoking to just like get away from it, and he seems like really anxious and kind of broken as a person.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is a moment when they burn themselves.
Yes.
They go past the cig.
Yes.
The white heat.
I think they hurt themselves like twice.
Yeah.
Because he like pinches himself, I think, and also burns himself with a cigarette. And then eventually their partner comes home, who's non-binary, which I thought was cool. Like they kind of have like this relationship where the partner takes care of them, but like clearly the main character needs so much more help than they're getting.
Because the main character in themselves resents the amount of care.
Yeah.
What was there was a phrasing, I'm sorry.
Well, do you want, like, are you talking about the last?
Oh,
there's those lovely italics thoughts that Clarence is so wonderful at. That are very dramatic, but they feel earned.
I think they're used just at the right frequency, where there's not too many italicized thoughts, and there's not too infrequent that you kind of forget how significant they are. It's balanced really well.
I think the line that you were looking for, Jarvis, was close to the end, where he's talking about just like what the tone of his partner's voice, where it's this, "Where's your head today, love?" And there it is again, that exasperated tone. He's come to resent it. It's not shouting, not so loud and harsh as that. So terribly empty, like he's a child unable to care for his own body.
That's where it is, yeah.
And like, he kind of is, which is horrible.
It is horrible, and that's super telling of the headspace that this main character is in the relationship that they share with each other. I mean, reading through it, I loved every moment of it.
Yes.
delightfully different than like anything else that I've really read. I think it's just chalking up to their style.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's poetry prose
exactly.
poetry.
And I just love these like moments within each paragraph where you're here and then you're not, but it's very poignant. Like at the end of the very first paragraph, start over. Mm-hmm. At the very ending, you have that question, right? Which I don't know. It's just.
You want to read out the question?
Are we really here, darling? If others aren't there to see through the facade we build.
Oof.
Which
yeah,
you're just swinging for the fences. That's amazing. And yeah, I don't know.
Elliot, do you have anything you want to
add? No, not really. I think you've both covered it.
That's because we're very verbose and we never stop talking.
Yeah, I don't know. This story just really kind of hits you with those melancholy feelings. Mm-hmm. Which I think is exactly what it's trying to do. So it's really well done.
Yeah, where it's like no one specifically is doing things really wrong. You can't blame anyone, but the situation's still bad. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Next story by Ace of Sword is called Embers. So this is a sequel to the first story they wrote for Do the Right Thing, which we actually covered, which was really cool because I remember reading this. At least I think I covered it because like I remember like thinking about it a lot the first time.
Yeah.
But it's so in the previous story, a beggar had learned a super magic fire spell and then burned down the slums where they lived, and the side character, this female guard, picks it up and takes it home, and so this kind of picks up where that left off, and we get like this is a very like cold place, and kind of like gray and dull a bit, and they're kind of the guard is like struggling to get heat, and she like remembers the inferno, but like in her dream where she's sleeping, she's picturing the inferno, and it's actually not bad at all because we get the sense that they're like kind of attuned to flame because of that. Like as we move on from the dream, we think back to it and realize that that's probably why. Like there's a line here I really like. She's surrounded by fire, and it says, she felt a strange sort of peace as she watched the dancing lights around her. Fire just being fire. There was no malice here, just nature. So I thought that was an interesting way to just like to portray fire. Of just like, hey, it's not destructive. It's just a thing.
It's just happening.
Yeah, and so she goes and she discovers the book which she had picked up, and it's radiating heat, and basically starts learning magic a little bit. And it kind of seems like by the end of it, I kind of got the sense like she's gonna do a kind of detective case to find out how it happened, basically. The original fire. So I thought I was very interested, and I want to see more of it.
Yeah, I'm really glad Ace of Sword posted the link to the original story because I hadn't read it, and so my implication from how the story ended, I was confused. I was like, so are we meant to have it implied that in some sort of trance she started the fire that had burnt everything down? But the original story sort of clarified that. But yeah, like I don't know. This feels like a step in a larger story, for sure.
Absolutely. Travis?
Yeah, definitely. Reading through it, I absolutely loved it. I mean, it is, I think, a really great sequel to the very first story. And just the way that it's written and the prose and the imagery.
Yeah, it's all really very solid. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that's definitely why I like it, because there are so many bits in this where I can really chew on, and I can really feel where we are. And I don't know, I just love being taken to that headspace, and the story definitely did it for me.
Sure. All right, next story is by Kepos21, and it's called Initiative. Because this is a Dungeons and Dragons story.
I do like D&D.
It's a very cute interaction where we have these people around the table playing Dungeons and Dragons, and we have like the narrative on both levels where we are in the world of the Dungeons and Dragons players, but we are also like in the world of their characters being kind of told at the same time through dialogue, but like fully in narrative.
Yeah.
And so there's this like climactic moment of the campaign where one of the players has kind of gone evil and is turning into a god and an evil monster god, and it's quick to summarize because there's like what matters in the story is the interaction between the characters and the kind of tone of like, hey, this is a dramatic moment, and sorry I'm bumming out your character, but don't worry, we're all here just to have a good time.
Exactly. I think the dialogue is my favorite part.
Yeah.
Because, as you said, it resides in both worlds. There are moments when, like, it's like, oh, we are here, we are in someone's like basement. But then there are other moments where they're just explaining all this plot that is happening. And yeah, I mean, this story just reminds me of every great moment of playing D&D to the fullest, and I like really love it for that.
Yeah, it captures the sort of the way role-playing games sort of cause you to bond with the people you're playing with. Like, I think that's really sort of what it's about. It's this slice of life of how this group's interactions work through D&D.
Yeah.
Even if one of your friends goes heal.
Yeah. So I very much enjoyed it.
Kipos needs to be punished for the opening line, though.
Yes, that was oof.
You've oohed your last woo villain.
Do you know what that is?
No.
It means you've wooed for the last time. I declare a 3-day ban from the Discord.
Kippos, you will no longer be on Do the Right Thing.
No. I think they earn themselves back with the rest of the story, but still, yes.
No, I actually think it does do a good job of setting the tone, because it's such a ridiculous statement. You're kind of like, what the hell? And then it does. It's actually, like, begrudgingly, I will admit, it does a good job of opening the story.
And if we're gonna punish anyone for the story that they wrote, Elliot.
Okay, that's fair.
Don't read the train story from Halloween. Don't do it. Well, do it, but also like do it with warning.
I feel like another positive about that line, no matter how bad it is that I've been in D&D groups where there's that one person who's just like quoting all of the memes from 2017.
I mean, I feel like Uwu still is irrelevant in some communities. This is a tangent I don't want to get into. Okay. Let's move on to the next story, which is
Bisexual Punch Party.
Our last story for the evening by Bisexual Punch Party, which is called Deal.
I didn't know. It's Worm fan fiction.
Yes, it's a Worm fan fiction. It's a story, I think, set in a take of Worm called Apollyon, which I assume is like some kind of apocalypse. I think if you've read Worm, you can kind of guess what this is, especially if you've read like Wild Bow, Word of God.
I think because Jarvis hasn't read Worm, so we'll avoid specific spoilers. But Apollyon, I had to Google it, is another name for Abaddon, which I think will fill in the gaps for.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was sort of what I needed.
Doesn't matter. Okay. Thank you. Okay, well, cool. But yeah, it's this. It's not canon to Worm. Like it wouldn't fit in the world of Worm that you read in the story. But it's this interesting, like, I think it's a really well executed story. It has from the perspective of just an average Joe who has to work with superpowered people. I'm converting it out of parahuman speak because I know that we have some non parahuman listeners.
I wonder who they would be.
Yourself is one, yes. So superheroes, because they're not really superheroes, they're more like mercenaries, and we can tell like the tension that is in this world between superheroes and non-superheroes, as like the average Joe like does. His name is Mike. Has to take a lot of steps to not piss them off, including just like not playing music that they won't like, just in case. And then we get to this deal, and tensions build up because we don't know if there's going to be a conflict. And we find out that the deal, that all of this stuff is over. It is really, a lot of tension being built up is over butter, which is a really well executed use of the words. Because
honestly, my favorite twist of 2019.
It's really well done. And there's a twist because they get thrown the butter and it's nice and chilled and cool, which is a nice setup for the fact that all the rest of the butter, the entire rest of the shipment, is all melted in terrible quality. But they have to take it because the other team that's selling them the butter has too much power on their side. Yeah, so I really like the story. I love the tension. I love just the world building of this world in particular and other things.
Yeah, because I mean, me not reading, getting too far into Worm, I instantly love the world that they were setting up in this story specifically, and the back and forth dialogue was so fun. Strange enough, it reminds me in some aspect of The Boys.
Yeah,
Have you seen it?
I've seen some.
It's a great show, but yeah. So yeah, I love anything superhero, and this definitely brought me in to this world and gave me a good laugh, laugh or two, but also really hit me.
I really like the post-apocalyptic setting, and I think capes are just enough of a unique spin on a post-apocalypse type thing that it doesn't feel like it's like, oh, here we go, another post-apocalypse. Like the capes kind of are like, ooh, this is a fun twist on that idea. And then we've already touched on like the butter reveal is so good, especially because it's one of the words, and so then it happens and you're like, oh
you're like, oh, of course it's going to be that.
Like I think I've talked about this on Deep in Pact. My favorite twists are the ones that make you feel like an idiot for not seeing it coming. And I think this one definitely fits that bill. It's so good. And I love I think the story does a really good job of world building. This kind of different take on the sort of Earth bet that we've seen in Worm. So I very much enjoyed reading it.
So, if you want to write, like all the other writers that have written in this week, you can do that by...
Why are you reading it like this? Okay. So, yes, if you want to be like the wonderful people that submitted this week...
on the subreddit, you can go to / do the right thing.
Or if you don't have a Reddit account or just don't want to post it yourself for some reason, you can send us an email at rightthingcast@gmail.com and we can post it for you, or we can just read it, or whatever else, or you can send us a message. Just tell us what's up. How's your day going? I would love to hear it. I will respond.
You will.
If we haven't blown up by then. If we're not like on the front page of Times by then, I will respond.
Yeah. The front page of
if
the
I'm
Awesome
not,
Times.
If I'm not a 30 under 30 media luminary at that point, I will respond to your message.
Exactly. But first...
Don't forget where you came from, Matthias.
Don't get where you came from. But first, we should give a shout out to all the people that submitted this
Yes,
week.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the wonderful people that submitted this week were...
Killing that.
Hold on. It's not working for me. I almost said Micey1, and I was like, wait. Quick Silvertongue.
Ace of Sword.
Kausubalu V2.
Shin 7.
No Goodbye.
Kippos 21.
Sarah Penguin.
Bisexual Punch Party.
And Moradinamail, which is Matt from Doof Proper.
Exactamundo. Thank you so much.
Which I wish I had been able to talk about the story, but we would not. So
yeah. So thanks for submitting. If y'all want to figure out what next week's words are, you can definitely follow us on Twitter.
Why are you phrasing it this way?
Which, Matthias, what is our Twitter
Our
again?
Twitter is RightThingCast. It's at RightThingCast.
At RightThingCast on Twitter.com. www.twitter.com.
Okay. You can also follow us on all your whatever. Subscribe to the podcast feed on whatever your podcast channel is.
Also, we have an Instagram that we don't post on.
Is that what you want to plug this week?
I want to plug it this week because I will promise you, I'll post one picture every time we record.
See, the problem of having an Instagram for a podcast is that there's not a lot to show, except for very unflattering pictures. Because this is my weekend outfit, right? So it's not like I'm not dressing today, Jarvis. Why are you taking a video?
When you get 100,000 followers on your Instagram, you can do a face reveal.
That's great. So, hold on.
Just make sure nobody goes to the Doof Media
For some
website
reason,
where there's already
my Discord kicks me out, so I'm not in the chat.
Oh, you can't hear him?
I'm back.
Okay. All right. This has been a very short mess. I don't know what's happened just very recently. And if if you like what we do, you can go to. Should we do a plug first? What do you think, Elliot? What is the order for these things? We still don't have quite a handle on this.
We just do it, and then
no, Ruben and I improv it, and it's always a mess. So
okay, great.
Definitely on the
but messes can be funny.
All right, let's go ahead and plug some Doof Media stuff. Number one, I want to plug this, and then Elliot, you can do your plug for whatever you want. But I want to plug a Media MD episode that's coming out.
Which one?
Soon. It's going to be on mainly on the Transformers the movie 1986.
Oh, it's crazy. Who's the guest on that?
Some no name, named Matthias. So I'm there to talk about one of my favorite childhood movies, which is the best Transformers movie. And so I have a lot to say about it. So I am looking forward to recording it tonight, and I'm looking forward to people hearing it when it comes out.
Exactly, because I'm pretty sure you have a lot to say about Michael Bay.
He's not cast in that movie.
What?
Yeah. Well, I think that movie will come up because I think I mentioned in the previous meeting today, I am an unapologetic fan of the original Transformers Michael Bay movie. And so I will be comparing these two, which is a fruitless exercise because they're so different, but I'm going to do it anyway.
I can't wait.
I mean, they're telling totally different stories, but at the same time,
absolutely.
It has the same aura to
Does it?
Sam Witwicky.
The only thing they share is the sound effect for when Transformers transform, I think.
That's true,
yeah.
Which is it's supremely iconic.
Also, personally, just slight tangent, I'm going to say that the Transformers Michael Bay movie is better because it doesn't have Hot Rod.
What?
Hot Rod
no.
is the worst Transformer.
No, Hot Rod is great. However, if you had replaced that name by saying Rodimus Prime, then I would have been like, fine, I get it.
Wait, is that his real name?
No, when he powers up at the end, basically.
Oh yeah, because he does become a Prime.
He turns into a truck, and he becomes Rodimus Prime.
Yes. So, if you want to hear more of this sort of ridiculousness, come stop by Media MD in a few days.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to get Rodimus Prime tattoos.
Anything else you would like to plug, Elliot?
So then the other Doof show I'm involved with is Deep in Pact, which follows Walbo's Pact web serial. It's pretty good, as evidenced by the 100 or so episodes we put out on it so far. So if you haven't read the story, you kind of got to do that first.
I mean, you could do it right alongside, and the thing about Pact is that it sucks you in, so you can get a lot done. I usually read an arc at a time, so like I read an arc ahead of you, and then I listen to the Deep in Pact episodes as they come out, which is so great because like any time at all, like I just finished what other podcast I was listening to. What can I listen to now? And Deep in Pact there's always an episode out because you guys are mad lads.
Because our release schedule is insane, and is modeled off Walbo's, which is even more insane.
Oh my gosh, I can't. Yeah, you guys are incredible. All right. So if you like what we do here, or like what we do at Deep Impact, Media MD, or all the other Doof shows, especially those by the Doof proper boys.
Yeah. Doof Prime.
The Doof Prime boys.
Doofamus Prime.
Doofus, Jesus Christ. You can go to our the Doof Media Patreon and leave give us $1 a month or whatever else you can afford. Doing so gives us access to the amazing Doof Discord, as well as plenty of other bonuses, as well as getting a slight bonus and getting mentioned in these Do the Right Thing episodes.
Exactly. And also, you're helping us out, helping us make the content that you want, helping us upgrade the content so it's a little bit smoother, sounds a little better to your ears. So
what's our new patron goal today, Jarvis?
Our new patron goal is if we can get guys, listen. if we can get $2,000
tomorrow
by tomorrow in the Patreon, we will do a never be before seen Do the Right Thing right off.
Okay.
Where me and Matthias live stream for 72 hours, and the goal is to see who can write the most words and who can create the best coherent story while we're also chugging 7 gallons of water.
The entire time.
The entire time, yeah. At the same time.
I will say, if we actually did receive $2,000, even in any reasonable amount of time after this, I would actually do that.
Yeah. It's a nice little write-off. You get to hang out with us at our best and worst.
Are we a tax write-off? Do we count as a charity?
Yeah. I mean,
Elliot, you've been with Doof Media longer. Is that the case?
My knowledge of taxation law in my own country is shaky enough. I have no idea what it's like over there.
I'm going to assume yeah. Because we got a tax break, right? So that's probably like something.
I mean, personally, I stopped paying them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, because
yes seems like the safe bet. You'd rather pay less tax than more, right? That's how it works.
That's true.
Exactly.
All right, we've extended this podcast very long.
And if you like more taxes, if you want proper taxation without representation, right? Then you can go down to your local courthouse and ask them to do the right thing.
We didn't even announce the words. You can't do that yet. Fuck. What are next week's words, Jarvis?
Next week's words are, let me pull them up really quick. I'm going to lay down a sick beat till I get it up. Hey, yeah, haha.
Do you freestyle, Jarvis?
I don't freestyle. I'm not. Not all black people can freestyle. Though, okay. At the metal show,
to be frank, I was trying to make that joke.
You were trying to make that joke?
Yes, I was. Okay.
I love the joke. But at the metal concert, slight tangent, there was this SoundCloud rapper that was freestyling outside. And speaking of SoundCloud rappers, next week's words are Soggy, Teeny, Lethal, and Prickly.
Oh my god.
That's a
what
fun
are these
set
words?
Of words.
So soggy, as in like when it's very very wet, like the cloth is very very wet and dripping.
What is teeny? Like teeny tiny?
Sorry, I just teeny. Yes, as in teeny tiny,
or is
as in very small. Huh?
Is that teen like?
Oh
like a
yeah,
teenager?
it could be like a teeny kind of movie. Okay, yeah. And lethal, as
like
in something that's going to kill you.
Yep.
Like the weapon, and prickly, like a cactus.
All right. So, I was walking through the desert. Because I had a caravan going through the Sahara, but we ran out of gas. We only had a teeny bit left, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to save it to lace my blunt with it.
Okay.
So the walk there was pretty lethal. There was no water.
Pretty lethal.
No water, no food. I had to cut open a prickly pear just to get a little bit of hydration. And I stuck my hand so far in that prickly pear that I ripped out its juices to where my finger ring was soggy.
Okay. Is that...
I used all of them.
Okay, so you just full stop right there? Okay. So I was going to the movies, and I was stopped by a teeny bopper with holding a lethal weapon, a gun, and she held it to my face. And I started talking to her, and she was like really prickly, like had a really prickly attitude, just like not being cool. But eventually I said something about, her parents getting a divorce, and she lowered the gun, then built up her anger, and she shot me in the stomach. My shirt came all soggy with blood, and then I died. So that's how I died. Shot by a prickly teeny bopper with a lethal weapon. In a soggy shirt.
One issue. Is, I don't know who I was talking to, but I mentioned the phrase teeny bopper, and they said that was the most disgusting phrase.
Yeah, I didn't like it, but also I was like, well, the other two aren't going to use this word, so I will.
Yeah, teeny bopper. I wonder why.
All right, Elliot, you go.
As I got out of the shower, my teeny pathetic excuse for a beard was both prickly and soggy, and
I hate this already.
I suck, and my self burns are lethal. The end.
Okay. Damn.
Is that a story?
I've been brutally murdered by this. Jesus, that story was lethal.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to hear more amazing stories like that, you should join us on the next episode of Do the Right Thing, so we can help you do the right thing. See, you have to use it in that phrasing too.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you do the right thing,
anything's possible.
And
then we just cut right there.
Yes.
We should just cut like right here,
or
like now.
Now.